Chapter 2. The first vulnerability. The darkness of the cave felt heavy, but the small flashlight provided just enough light for Leo to see the shift in Marcus's expression. They were still sitting side by side, their fingers tightly intertwined, a lingering hold from a moment of panic. Neither of them seemed willing to break. Leo was in the middle of rambling about possible escape routes when a sudden thought struck him. "Oh, I've got an idea. If we could build a giant magnifying glass and concentrate the flashlight beam, we might be able to melt a path through the rock and turn it into lava. Or hear me out, if I suddenly developed laser eyes as a superpower, we could just slice right through it. Basic science, really?" He continued his increasingly ridiculous explanation, gesturing wildly in the cramped space with complete seriousness. His brow furrowed as if he were presenting a groundbreaking scientific discovery. What Leo didn't notice was Marcus's shoulders beginning to shake. A small chuckle escaped Marcus's throat before it quickly grew into genuine laughter that echoed through the damp cavern walls. Leo stopped mid-sentence. His face turned bright red as he finally glanced down and noticed their joined hands. The realization hit him like a falling boulder. He jerked backward as if he'd touched a hot stove, his stutter returning instantly. I mean, I didn't realize we were still holding hands. Sorry." Marcus's laughter softened into a tired smile. Instead of teasing him, he simply reached out and took Leo's hand again, his grip steady and reassuring. "It's fine, Leo. My ideas aren't much better than yours. We'll come up with a real solution tomorrow. Right now, we need to save our strength and get some sleep." "Just so we're clear," Leo muttered, "those were definitely real solutions." Marcus raised an eyebrow before gently tapping Leo's forehead with one finger. "You read too many books." Leo immediately turned his face away. "Whatever." As the temperature inside the cave continued to drop, Leo began to shiver. Before he could pull farther away, Marcus shrugged off his varsity jacket and draped it over both of them. Then he pulled Leo closer, tucking him against his side to share what little warmth they had. Leo froze, his heart hammered against his ribs. He was inches away from the person who had made his life miserable for months. Yet all he could smell was a clean, crisp scent of mint. For some reason, it was strangely comforting. For the first time in a very long time, Leo felt safe. "How's your leg?" Leo whispered. Marcus shrugged, though the movement looked stiff. "Fine. Just a scratch." Leo knew that was a lie. The injury looked much worse than Marcus was willing to admit, but he decided not to push the subject. He wasn't about to ruin one of the few peaceful moments he'd ever shared with the enemy. The silence stretched between them, comfortable and warm despite the cold surrounding them. Eventually, exhaustion won. Leo drifted off to sleep. When he woke the next morning, the cave was still dark. For a moment, he couldn't figure out why he wasn't cold anymore. Then realization struck. His arms were wrapped tightly around Marcus. Not casually, not accidentally, tightly, as if Marcus were a giant teddy bear that required maximum hugging. Marcus remained fast asleep, his steady breathing the only sound in the cavern. Leo's eyes widened. His brain stopped functioning. Then he screamed. "Oh!" He launched himself away from Marcus so quickly, he nearly tripped over his own feet. The sudden noise startled Marcus awake. He bolted upright. "Oh! What happened?" Marcus shouted. Leo pointed at him dramatically. You! The words died in his throat. There was absolutely no way he could explain what had happened. So, like any reasonable and dignified teenager facing overwhelming embarrassment, Leo turned bright red, crawled to the opposite side of the cave, and curled into a ball. He refused to make eye contact with another living creature for the rest of his life. Marcus stared at him in complete confusion. Leo, Did you see a spider or something? Leo buried his face in his knees. Marcus shook his head. You really aren't a morning person. A small smile tugged at his lips as he watched Leo. For a moment, everything felt strangely peaceful. Then a muffled voice echoed through the rocks blocking the cave entrance. Both boys froze. Another voice followed. Then another. People were shouting their names. The rescue was a blur of shouting camp leaders and frantic flashlight beams cutting through the heavy cave air. Footprints had led the search party directly to the hidden crevice. And within hours, Leo and Marcus were pulled back into the disorienting, harsh light of the surface. Everything felt wrong. The transition from the shared silence of the cave where they were equals to the bustling, judgmental noise of the real world was jarring. The camp coordinators, clearly terrified of liability, rushed them to an ambulance truck that was waiting by camp, whispering about safety protocols and avoiding lawsuits, while ushering them home 2 days early. By the time Leo arrived home, the house felt colder than the cave ever had. His father was waiting, his face a mask of simmering fury. The school had called to say Leo had been involved in an incident that forced an early dismissal. Weak, you're just like I thought. His father spat, the words cutting deeper than any physical blow. You couldn't even make it through a baby camping trip without needing to be dragged out. They realized you weren't good enough for them. I'll teach you a lesson, boy. Leo stood silently, his head bowed, as he held out his arm. He didn't fight back. He didn't even flinch. He just watched as the familiar, painful rhythm of his father's frustration played out in bruises that danced across his skin as if they were footprints. Leo was used to the beatings of his father so much that he was numb to the sensation. He was used to feeling small. He usually thought it was normal and it's what he deserved. The sound of his father faded into the background as if it was a rerun of an expected story. Later, in the safety of his room when his dad was sick of the view of his own offspring, Leo pulled on his thickest, longest sweater, hiding the fresh purple and blue marks on his arm. He sat on the edge of his bed, clutching his pillow to his chest. Usually, this was the time of night he would spiral into self-loathing or cry himself to sleep. But tonight his mind kept drifting. He couldn't and didn't want to name the feeling, but it was a phantom warmth. He could still smell the crisp, clean scent of mint, and for the first time in his life, the silence of his room didn't feel lonely. It felt like a space waiting for something to happen. The next Monday, the walk to school felt like navigating a minefield, yet every step remained strangely peaceful. When Leo saw Marcus approaching in the hallway, his body instinctively tensed, bracing for the familiar impact of an insult, a shove, or some performance Marcus usually put on for his followers. But Marcus didn't slam into him. He didn't even slow down. As they passed, he simply nodded. "Morning, Leo," he said almost casually. Leo froze. His mind stalled, trying to process what had just happened, or more accurately, what hadn't. He stood there long after Marcus walked away, heart hammering against his ribs. He even pinched his arm hard enough to make himself wince, just to confirm he wasn't dreaming. Then he scanned the hallway like something had to be wrong, like a gas leak, or a glitch in reality, or maybe he'd slipped into some parallel dimension where Marcus was normal. He ducked into the bathroom anyway, staring at the mirror. He waved a hand in front of his face, like he might turn invisible at any second. Nothing changed. Everything looked exactly the same, and somehow that made it worse. The confusion only deepened at lunch. Leo sat in his usual spot, his lunch tray his only company. When he saw Marcus approaching with his usual intimidating presence, Leo instinctively braced again. Already expecting his food to be taken, his space invaded the usual routine. Instead, the crowd that followed Marcus simply flowed around Leo like water around a stone. Marcus sat directly across from him. Leo slowly opened his lunch, still suspicious. Then he noticed Marcus eating his own food. Not Leo's, his own. That alone felt like a violation of the natural order. "Rough weekend?" Marcus asked, his tone oddly flat, missing the usual edge. He pushed his tray forward and nudged a small container of carrots toward Leo. "Do you want these? I'm allergic to carrots." Leo stared at them like they were evidence in a crime scene. Then he looked up at Marcus, searching for the smirk, the trap, the punchline, anything that would make this moment make sense. There was nothing, just a steady, unreadable expression. What?" Leo finally managed. His voice cracked slightly. "Why are you?" Marcus shrugged and took another bite of his sandwich, completely unfazed by the collapse of their usual dynamic. "You're acting strange today, Leo. I think you finally lost it. Or maybe you're an imposter." Leo blinked. "You're acting strange," he thought, staring at him like his brain had hit a wall. But he didn't say it out loud. Instead, he just squinted harder, like that might decode the situation. His eyes drifted back to the carrots. Marcus noticed. "I didn't poison them," he added. "That didn't help." Leo hesitated, then slowly reached for one anyway, his hands slightly trembling, like he was defusing something instead of eating it. His entire body felt caught between suspicion, confusion, and a very inconvenient flicker of relief he didn't know what to do with. If this was a game, it didn't follow any rules he understood. He took a bite. Not because he trusted Marcus. Not because he was brave. He was just kind of hungry. And for now, that felt like the only thing in the world that made sense. The cafeteria grew strangely quiet, or maybe it was just Leo's hearing turning into a high-pitched hum of anxiety. He stared at the carrots, then back at Marcus, his heart doing a frantic, confused rhythm in his chest. Marcus sighed. The tough guy act that usually shielded him was crumbling like the cave entrance. He looked down at the table, picking at the edge of his tray before meeting Leo's gaze with a vulnerability that felt far more terrifying than any threat. "Look, Leo," Marcus started, his voice low enough that the nearby tables couldn't catch it. I know you don't trust me. Why would you? After everything I did. The way I treated you? It's probably a joke to you or some kind of sick game." Leo held his breath, his hands gripping the edge of his seat so hard his knuckles turned white. "I don't expect you to trust me yet," Marcus continued, his eyes searching Leo's face with a desperate kind of honesty. "Maybe you never will, but you were there for me in that cave. When I was scared and stuck, you didn't leave. You actually helped. And I don't know how to pay that back, or how to say I'm sorry for being a complete villain in your life." He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping even softer. Can you give me a chance? Just a chance to fix things? I don't need you to be my best friend today, or tomorrow. I just don't want to be the reason you're looking over your shoulder anymore." The cafeteria noise seemed to rush back in all at once, but Leo couldn't move. The smell of mint lingered again, faint but grounding, cutting through the stale scent of cafeteria food. For the first time in years, the destroyer sitting across from him wasn't acting like a predator. He was acting like a scared, complicated person who was actually asking for his permission. And Leo didn't know what terrified him more, what Marcus used to be, or what he might actually be now. Leo's throat felt tight. He thought about the bruises hidden under his long sweater, the loneliness of his house, and then he looked at Marcus's hands resting on the table, the same hands that had held his own in the dark. Leo didn't want to let go of that memory. Leo's voice was barely a rasp. He didn't say yes, but he didn't run away. He just looked at Marcus, really looked at him, and nodded once, slowly. I need time, Marcus." "I know," Marcus replied, a look of genuine relief washing over his features. "Take all the time you need." He held onto a fragile, flickering hope for a future. For once, the cat hadn't chased the mouse. Instead, it had brought the mouse cheese. Marcus reached out, ruffling Leo's hair with a soft, lingering smile. "Did I ever tell you I like your orange hair?" No one noticed anything different about us. When Marcus stood close to me, people just assumed it was another day of me being bullied. They saw the shadow but never the substance. If they had bothered to look between the lines, they would have realized that the cave we were in had never truly disappeared. It had just followed us home. I looked up into Marcus's eyes for the first time that day and finally realized that what I was feeling wasn't fear, and it wasn't the aftermath of trauma. It was him. The hum of the cafeteria was a dull roar that usually made my skin crawl, but sitting across from Marcus, it felt strangely muffled, like we were under a dome of quiet. Marcus didn't look like the boy who used to make my life a living hell. He looked so puzzling, his fingers tracing the rim of his plastic tray. He hesitated, then reached into his pocket and slid a folded slip of paper across the sticky table. It landed between my tray and his, looking stark and significant against the cluttered surface. "My number," he said, his voice barely rising above the ambient noise. "Just, if things get loud again, or if you need to talk, you don't have to use it, but it's there." My stomach tightened. My first instinct was to pull back, to treat the paper like it was burning. Taking it felt like an admission, a bridge I wasn't sure I was ready to build. What was happening? I asked myself. But then, my eyes drifted to his hand resting near the edge of the table. A sudden, warm memory cut through my hesitation. I remembered the feeling of his hand in mine in the frantic, desperate moments where the world felt like it was closing in. I remembered how his grip had been my anchor, the one thing that kept me from drifting into total panic. I realized then that it hadn't just been me leaning on him for safety. We had been holding each other steady in the middle of our own private storm. I picked up the paper and held it close to my chest. "Okay?" I whispered, the word feeling heavier and more honest than anything I'd said in months. I tucked the paper into my pocket, the friction of it against my jeans feeling like a promise. When I looked back up at him, the fear that usually defined our interactions wasn't entirely gone, but it had shifted. It wasn't a wall between them anymore. It was something thinner, uncertain, like a shadow of something new and unfamiliar, shrinking each time he met Marcus's eyes. Then Leo noticed it. As Marcus turned to leave, there was a slight unevenness in his step. A limp, subtle enough that no one else in the cafeteria would have registered it, lost in the flow of students and noise. Marcus kept smiling anyway, like he always did. "See you later," he said over his shoulder, casual, almost normal. Leo opened his mouth. No sound came out. He tried again, forcing the words up, but Marcus was already moving into the crowd, swallowed by the wave of people. The noise of the cafeteria seemed to rise all at once, and suddenly Leo's voice didn't feel like it belonged in the same world anymore. Like shouting underwater, like trying to reach something already too far away. And for the first time, Leo understood something he hadn't before. The hardest part wasn't fear anymore. It was how quickly someone could become close enough to notice, and still be gone before you could say a single word. He waited until he was alone later that afternoon, the weight of the earlier encounter still pressing on his chest. He found Marcus by the lockers, icing his ankle while the rest of the team cleared out. The silence between them was heavy, but for the first time, it didn't feel like an ambush. "Marcus," Leo started, his voice barely rising above the hum of the ventilation. How's your leg?" Marcus looked up, instantly guarded. "What? How's your leg?" Marcus went still, He stared at Leo for a long, baffled second, the skepticism in his eyes slowly dissolving into pure confusion. It wasn't that the question itself was abnormal, but he was so used to being treated like a machine someone expected to perform without fail, without pain, and without needing anything. Nobody ever asked if he was okay. He didn't quite know how to react, so he fell back on the safest thing he had. Blunt, practiced honesty. "My doctor said I had a sprain," Marcus murmured, looking down at his taped ankle. "And coach said I'll be able to play the next game on Friday." Leo felt a genuine, quiet wave of relief wash over him. That's good," he said softly. He didn't say anything else, but the tension in the room had shifted, leaving them both standing in the wake of something neither of them knew how to name yet. As Leo left school, he was ambushed by Yuki and pulled toward their usual hiding spot, a quiet corner of the library they had unofficially claimed as their sanctuary. He was still reeling from the encounters, his mind replaying Marcus's soft voice and the lingering scent of mint. "Okay, spill," Yuki said, dropping her bag with a thud. She narrowed her eyes at him, leaning in. "We saw you talking to Marcus again. What did he do to you today? Did he say something? If he messes with you, I'm going to teach him a lesson next time." Sarah, ever the gentle soul, was already shifting closer, her arms ready to offer a comforting hug. "We've got your back, Leo. You don't have to deal with him alone." Leo felt his throat tighten. He didn't do anything, guys. Seriously. Yuki and Sarah exchanged a look of pure confusion. "Nothing," Yuki pressed. "He just chatted with you? In the open hallway?" "Yeah," Leo stammered, frantically trying to find a topic that didn't involve the boy who was on his mind all day. He was just, I don't know, he just wanted to ask about the homework or something. Leo told a lie because the truth Leo didn't understand fully yet. "Homework?" Yuki laughed, sounding skeptical. "Since when does the star athlete care about homework? Besides, people are already whispering. There's this rumor going around that you two were actually trapped in that cave together for hours. Is that why he's acting so weird?" Sarah said, "I wish I went to that trip. It must have been hard to deal with that big bully alone. Must have been very scary." She hugged me out of Sarah's nature. There, Leo. I'm here for you." Leo felt a surge of heat crawl up his neck, burning his ears. He tried to laugh it off, but it came out as a strangled squeak. It was just a freak accident, the cave. Trying to not name the feeling, imagining Marcus. "Ooh, trapped in the dark," Sarah teased, her eyes widening with sudden, mischievous delight. She nudged Leo's shoulder playfully. "What's the old saying of what happens in the dark in the woods? Did you two end up kissing in the dark to pass the time or something?" Sarah laughed so loud at the ridiculousness of the situation. "As if," Yuki snarled, giving a chuckled smirk at Sarah. The air left Leo's lungs. The image flashed in his mind, the closeness, the varsity jacket, the way Marcus had held him, and he felt his face ignite in a shade of red he didn't know was possible. He couldn't handle it. The embarrassment was a physical weight, a suffocating pressure. He shouted the word, "bathroom," met by the librarian shushing him. He bolted, chair clattering to the floor as he burst out of the library and sprinted toward the nearest bathroom. Behind him, Sarah and Yuki looked at each other, confused. Sarah said playfully, "See? The idea of even thinking about Marcus made him sick." They both continued to laugh, their voices fading behind him. Leo slammed the heavy door behind him, locking it, and gripped the edge of the cold porcelain sink. His chest was tight, his heart beating a frantic, erratic rhythm against his ribs. He slid down the door until he was sitting on the damp, tiled floor, hugging his knees to his chest. Every breath was a struggle, coming in jagged, shallow gasps. The silence of the bathroom wasn't empty. It was loud with the echo of his own racing pulse. He squeezed his eyes shut, trying to stop the tears that came hot and fast anyway. His mind betrayed him, not with the teasing, but with the cave, the dark, the closeness, the sound of Marcus's voice when everything else had disappeared. Leo, stay close, Leo. Leo curled tighter into himself, fingers digging into his arms through the sleeves of his hoodie. He didn't understand why that memory hurt so much and steadied him at the same time. It felt wrong to miss something that had been terrifying. "What is wrong with me?" he whispered, voice breaking. His hand trembled as it slipped into his pocket. The folded paper was still there, Marcus's number. He pulled it out. His breath felt gone. He stared at it like it might change if he looked long enough. His thumb hovered over his phone. He didn't understand what he was asking for. Not really. Only that the feeling inside him was too loud to sit with alone. His thoughts narrowed into something small and sharp and frighteningly simple. "I need him to answer," he typed. "Marcus, I need you." He stared at the screen, tears blurring his vision, not daring to hope for anything more than silence. But then his phone vibrated violently against the tile. Leo flinched. He looked down. Marcus had replied instantly. "Where are you? I'm coming."